And the holidays are meant to be a time of joy, but stress can inevitably sneak up on us. It tends to be the season of overspending. Vice President of Insolvency at Bromwich+Smith, Shawn Stack, joins us now to discuss ways to ensure that you don't overextend. Good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you this morning?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that this is a really important topic to tackle, especially right now. And you have 6 tips that you're going to share with us as well on ways to manage debt this holiday season. So we're going to start with the first one, and that's celebrating those small wins. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. And this is something I think we all need right now, and we're definitely going to need it in January. So the idea behind celebrating a small win is that we focus on sort of our smaller balances first on the credit card debts and the debts that we have, and we focus on paying those down, because as they go down and they disappear, although it may not make the larger difference on the global amount of money that you owe, but it feels good. It builds up that energy towards the success of becoming debt-free.
Okay, that's really good to note. And then another one too, we're going to bridge them together, is how can we target higher interest debt, but then also consider consolidating high interest debt itself? I know that you want to break them up a little bit.
Yeah, well, and these are also extremely important, because when we're talking about paying down the smaller ones, the thing we also want to consider, because it's going to be dependent on the individual and how they frame their world. So when we're looking at high interest rates, the interest that's owing on, typically it's our credit cards, it can be 19%. Some of these things can go up to 28%. And that is an astronomical amount of interest that we can end up owing as Canadians. And what happens is, as we don't make the payments, or as we're not reducing that, the amounts that we're often making on our credit cards, it's just enough to cover the interest and a little bit of the principal. So what I encourage people to do is actually look at their credit card balances, and it's going to show you on the statements, it's going to say, if you pay the minimum payment, this is how long it's going to take you to pay this off. And you're going to be completely surprised, because it's actually going to likely exceed your expected lifetime. And so the creditors know this, and this was actually put in the law quite a few years ago. And it's important for us as Canadians to be looking at and saying, how does that fit within my future goals? Mm-hmm. And when you're in this place, Andrea, and you think like, goodness, well, I'm trying to reduce my interest rates. Well, you could consider getting a debt consolidation loan to actually reduce that interest rate. But what we want to make really sure we're doing here is that, A, the interest rate is lower, because oftentimes what we can do is we only focus on the actual monthly payment. So we're not really thinking about what the interest rate is. We think, well, I can reduce my monthly payment and I'm okay. Right. Well, what we want to do is we want to get to lower interest rate, and we want to keep that monthly payment the same. So we're making the payments that we're making, we're actually reducing that debt. Mm-hmm. And Andrea, if I could, one of the things that's very important here as well is when we're looking at consolidation loans, people may say, the creditors may say to you, hey, I want a family member to co-sign this, or I want to get security or collateral. And so it's very important when we're looking at asking family members to co-sign on something like this. Remember that that's not saying your family member, when you co-sign for someone, you're not saying, hey, they're good for it and I love them. You're actually saying they could be bad for it and I love them, and if they don't pay, I'm going to pay. So only when we're going to co-sign for someone, make sure that we can afford that payment, right, in the event that our loved one is unable to make it.
Okay, I know that there's a lot of information there. That's a lot of good information too. We have about 40 seconds left, and I really want to touch on this next one as well, is that before we're even starting to shop right now during the holidays, we need to be setting limits and sticking to it. And sometimes that's just a lot easier said than done.
Absolutely. It's very important. Set your limits. Don't let your credit card limit define what you're going to be spending. So once you've decided what you're going to be spending, make sure that you're keeping on that amount, because if you go over that amount, although this is the season of giving, we can give with our time and with our affection. We don't want to be giving with our credit, because come January, you're going to end up with a headache, a hangover that is going to be a real nightmare to get rid of.
Mm-hmm. I think that's also well said. Thank you so much for all this really great information here today, Shawn. We appreciate it. For anybody at home that's looking for a little bit more information or for some professional advice, Bromwich+Smith.com is where you can head to. Thank you so much again.
My pleasure.
Debt Real Talk with Bromwich+Smith. Free confidential debt relief consultations.